Again, thank you for joining us for this session on AI for social studies. For those of you who don't, my name's Lulu. I'm the head of teacher experience at Flint. And on the call with me from our team is also Sun, our head of marketing. But yeah, excited to chat with you all today about the different applications of Flint for different social studies courses. So as a quick overview of what we'll cover today, I usually start off with some ice-breaking news. This is just like news that I saw recently that might be interesting to chat about, kind of get the ball rolling with allowing people to really share their thoughts. Then I'm going to show activities in Flint and then chats, simply because the activities are usually a bit more involved and we can walk through it in more detail. And then the chats are just like a quick run through. And then finally, I usually try for about half of the remaining time. We'll have time to share out stories from different educators that I invited specifically for this reason. But also, if you have any examples that you want to share with the group of how you've been using activities or things that you've learned over the course of using Flint, that would be awesome. Yeah, okay. And then final housekeeping things. The recording will be available later and questions are welcome at any time. Feel free to raise your hand or even just interrupt me. I'll pause between sections for questions as well. So if you want to save it for that, also feel free. Great, so I'll start off with the ice-breaking news. Actually, just a couple days ago, Claude, which is one of the really big AI model creators, they released a education report and they were looking at how university students are using Claude. And so I thought there were some pretty interesting statistics in here. First of which, I mean, this is maybe no surprise, but computer science majors in college are very disproportionately AI users. But they said that the trend that they were seeing was that a lot of STEM students are early adopters, for example, in computer science and natural sciences and math. But in contrast, business, health, and humanities students show pretty low adoption rates relative to their enrollment numbers. And so it's interesting because I see this parallel between sometimes it's the humanities teachers who are hesitant to use AI because they're fearful of students using it to shortcut learning. But it seems also that students in the humanities are also hesitant to use AI and not using it as much as their peers. And then the Claude team also put together this matrix of how different students are using AI. So either through a direct means of asking a question directly or a collaborative means of getting the AI to work with them on something. And then the other side of the matrix is either using AI for problem solving or for output creation. And, we might think that most students are using it for this top left square where students are seeking a lot of direct solutions and explanations. But they said from their data that each of these four categories was represented pretty much evenly. So it kind of showed the breadth of different use cases and applications that students are finding for AI, which I thought was really interesting too. But yeah, any thoughts on this data? Anything that surprised you or kind of makes sense to you? Feel free to unmute and share your thoughts. Yeah, I guess actually, Sun on our team, do you have any thoughts on this?
Give me 30 seconds and then I'll come back to you.
I'm good.
I have a thought on it.
Yeah, go ahead, Spawn.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the data with us. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So my thought on it is just I would like to see the research behind it, right? Because anytime a company produces its own information, I always question it, even though it's like trust but verify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me share these slides with you all. I did link the entire I guess, article that they wrote about this in the slides, and they kind of described their methods there, but of course it's hard to verify. I don't think they shared like their exact like spreadsheet of all of the information that they found. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting read and contains like a lot more insights than what I tried to condense here. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? I mean, if not, all good. I would encourage you all to explore it after this call or whenever you have some free time. It does have some pretty interesting insights in there. But yeah, without further ado, I'll dive into activities in Flint. So I tried to consolidate like a quick list of all the applications that we typically see in humanities classes like social studies. And a lot of Flint's focus at least is rather than the student prompting AI, like half of the examples that we saw earlier, the AI is actually prompting the student. So through creating activities, you as the teacher can design what the experience looks like, either using Flint to create personalized and differentiated introductions to new topics. You can have students play in debates or role plays where the AI takes on a different persona. You can definitely have it assess students on understanding through generated practice and quizzes. It's really good at digging deeper and asking additional questions about their reasoning and asking them to explain more if they've only given like half an answer. Yeah, and Flint has access to the internet, so you can have it be a research partner for students or even a brainstorming partner. And it can also be a feedback generator for writing. You can input your own rubric and have it give students feedback on various writing topics. I'll show a couple examples of how to create these. But firstly, let me show you all what that looks like in the platform. So this is Flint. Hopefully most of you all have seen it. If not, like yours will look similar. It'll just say your school name in the top left. But yeah, within the Flint homepage, we have the chats, which I'll go over later. They're kind of like similar to ChatGPT, but you get all of the additional Flint perks in here, like the calculator, the web search, image generation. I'll go through some examples of that after, but first we're going to scroll down and create an activity. So here I'm going to have Flint debate against my students. So once I click on that option, it brings me to this panel or this page where I can start editing the activity. And on the left-hand side here, there's a conversation with Flint where it will start asking me questions about the context it needs to know to understand how it should interact with my students. And as I chat with it in here, it will start creating the settings for me, and then it will, once it's created an activity that I can try out, it'll appear in the preview on the right-hand side. So I'm going to put in this prompt to have students role play being a representative at the Treaty of Versailles negotiations. Give students a couple of countries to choose from for them to play as. They're in 10th grade. I want you to test their knowledge of main events and decisions that happened over the course of World War I. So the way I crafted this was, introducing a topic, kind of giving it a little bit of guidance on how I want it to interact with the students, giving it the context of how old they are so that it can level its language correctly, and then also giving it a goal of why I want them to be interacting with this activity. Of course, you don't have to put this all in one message. Flint will eventually ask you a bunch of questions, or you can see through the preview whether or not it's going in the right direction that you want it to. But this is just the basis that I've set up for this activity. And I'm going to send that. And through this chat, Flint is going to be your partner in creating this. So here it's saying let me make changes. That means that it's writing a bunch of the settings for me. I don't have to do the prompt engineering, which is great. But you can also use Flint as a brainstorming partner directly in this chat. So once it's created that, I can, of course, see the specific settings that it's written for everything, and it will also give me a summary, an overview of the key things that are happening in this activity, how students are going to be graded. Yeah, and of course you can like go ahead and try this out. I'm gonna ask it one more question. So I can use Flint as a brainstorming partner in the building chat. And basically I'm saying, in what ways can I make this more engaging while also testing students' knowledge? So I want to see what additional suggestions for this activity it can give me. And so here it's saying I can add historical challenges and scenarios like crisis scenarios, secret objectives, primary source integration. We can have character profiles, prop suggestions, historical speeches, where the students have to deliver an opening statement in the style of their historical figure. Voting mechanisms, maps, time negotiation rounds. So it gives me a lot of different options, and I can just tell it which ones sound interesting to me. So maybe we want to integrate some primary sources and then also do historical. So I'll put 3 and 6 sound great. Yeah, and here it will just go ahead and update the activity with those suggestions. And I just want to know, I didn't upload any content for this one. You don't always have to, but I do recommend that if you do have content, it can really help gear the knowledge of Flint. You know, AI is trained on this vast wealth of knowledge. We never really know where it's pulling from. So if you have your own content that you'd like to upload, you can do that here, either by uploading a document from your computer, or you can add a website that you trust, or yeah, link to news articles, blog posts, whatever you might find on the internet. Yeah, looks like it's thinking really hard about this. Okay. Yeah, so it added the primary sources and the historical speeches into this activity. And at this point, it sounds like it would be pretty interesting and fun. So I'm going to also preview the session here. So you can either use the simulated preview, which will allow you to view what a certain level of students' interaction might look like. So this is mapped to the different grading levels in the activity. And you can look at like how a really well-crafted response might look versus a student who maybe struggled with their response a bit. But you can also start the session manually and try it out. I usually suggest the teachers to do both. Use the simulation to get a quick feel for how the activity is going to go, and then also try it out manually, pretend to be like a struggling student and see how much it helps you. Because AI is designed to be super helpful, so sometimes it is a little too helpful. So it's good to double check that part. But yeah, let's look at what a developing level might look like. So here, it gives you like a little summary of everything that's happening. And now it's playing both Flint's role and the student's role, and you can see what sorts of things that they're talking through, how the interactions are playing out. And yeah, and it's incorporating some of the quotes and primary resources that I had asked it to. Great. Any questions about setting up an activity? Oh, Robert said, I found that if you plan on reusing the activity but with different uploaded material in the future, I attach the documents in the manual builder behavior section. Is this valid? Yeah, I think that works. You could also tell Flint to replace the documents in the new builder. So what Robert, or I know sometimes people colloquially call you Bob, is referring to is in the build manually, you can see all of the different settings that Flint has created. And this is great for teachers who like really want to dig in and like to learn the prompt engineering side. But yeah, if you go to the manual and then behavior in the guidelines for Flint, this is where you can attach additional resources. And if to Flint in the builder chat, it'll add it here. But you can also update in either way. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was just gonna thanks for letting me speak here for a second, because I just did this with a social studies teacher the other day, and what we realized is we uploaded a bunch of materials in the chat, right? But then they didn't show up like on this manual side. So when we went to go replace the materials, we weren't sure if the activity was really replacing them or if it still had those materials as knowledge.
I see.
So we found that if we attach we set up the guidelines in the chat, but then came here to attach the items, because then they actually show up here. So then when we do a duplicate, we can clear them and then re-upload.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You're like telling both in the guidelines for it to use the new materials and then also adding it in the build manually section.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably good. The only reason that like I don't say to just like always update directly and build manually is that there might be other parts in the settings that are referencing the old material. So for example, if like a lot of the guidelines here are talking about the Treaty of Versailles. If I just wanted to switch this to like a completely different negotiation or a completely different role play, I could update the materials, but then the guidelines themselves wouldn't actually update. So you would definitely want to like, it's easier to ask Flint to update the topic and then also update the materials in the manual section. Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, go ahead.
So Lulu, I know, and I'd be curious if you could show us quickly, like if we wanted to tie this to change up the grading or the assessment of it. So if I wanted to include my own custom, I don't know, 3-part competency to the IB and the AP, can you just quickly explain that?
Yeah. So I would also suggest that the easiest way to do that is through the chat. So if you have your own rubric, that's awesome. You can upload it directly into Flint, tell it to reference that when it's grading students, and it will do that. I can tell it something here like grade students using an AP scale of grading. And then it kind of knows like the different standards of grading. So if you said like AP or IB or something, it would be able to, oh, I guess it didn't hear me very well. Okay, hold on. Grade students using the AP scale. Okay. Yeah, so it should be able to apply any like well-known standards automatically without you uploading anything. But if there's anything that's like your own, I would definitely upload the rubric that you want to use and have Flint apply that to its own settings. So yeah, here you can see it's changed the rubric to now be on a 1 to 5 scale, similar to what students would see in their AP exams. Great. Yeah, any other questions, comments, concerns about creating activities? Awesome. Yeah. So once you're happy with how the activity is behaving, you've previewed it a couple times, you can just create the activity and share with your students. Typically here, we let people know like, hey, you can add this to a different group if you want, a different class group, and make that available to the students. But honestly, the easiest and most surefire way for your students to receive the activity is to send them the link. And they can just sign in with their school email and they'll be brought directly to the activity. Yeah, go ahead, Emma.
I just have a couple like sort of process related things with this because I've been using it pretty heavily with prompts lately where I'll feed in an article and have them like work off of that article and kind of like, write a paragraph or two, using the article as evidence. My issue has to do with like, and the grading seems okay. Like when I fed a very specific rubric in, it went through and it kind of gave it a range and be like, okay, they got, 14 to 17 out of 20 or, 17 to 20, which I think that's understandable that, maybe a teacher should come back in and then evaluate properly and put an actual number on it, or I might just give them the highest number of that range. But the issue I'm having is like sifting through that content that they produce then, and this might just be a development thing, but the screen always feels so jammed up with. I know you can reduce that one little sidebar, but it's hard to evaluate what they read. It's such a long, like, scrolling feed of stuff that I feel like I'm in, in a blog type of situation. And I know that you can print it out, but I just want to know if there's a way to maybe, get that content in a more streamlined form so that I could just print a bunch of assignments out, look at them, quickly read them, make some marks, or, and I don't know what that. I'm just starting to get to that level of where I want to do higher level evaluation, but I'm finding that the screen being filled with stuff, and it makes it hard for kids on iPads too, because they're constantly juggling that sidebar text input thing. That's the other side of it. So I just want to know if you wanted to speak to those things at all.
Yeah. I do know that a lot of teachers do print out the activities and then or the sessions, and they like to notate on it, and use that as a method of both documenting the students' work and also giving them feedback. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess Bob or Ned, do you all have any suggestions for how Emmett might be able to better sift through everything? Because it is a lot of content. Or anyone else on the call. I'll also give it some thought too.
I missed the question, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Emmett was, oh, Emmett, you're muted. Oh, Emmett was asking how he can better sift through all of the content that is generated as students are using Flint for writing feedback.
I just have a thought. Maybe it's possible to cut and paste it into another AI, and to ask it to, to give you feedback in the format that you're looking for. I've never tried that, but that's a possibility.
One thing that would definitely work for sure. One thing that one of our teachers are doing here, which is kind of innovative, is at the end of the Flint activity, we ask the Flint activity builder to generate a summary document with these kind of outline, this kind of breakdown. And it does it really, really well. So the kids will complete the activity, and then before they hit like submit activity, or even after they submit, it'll actually generate a document with the breakdown that we're looking for. And that document, it can be, it's part of the chat, so you can just fast forward to that bit. They can also add it to Google Drive and submit it for like a Google Classroom assignment, or so there's a variety of ways that you can then collect that document. It's one way to do it if you just want to kind of keep everything inside of Flint. But otherwise, yeah, copying and pasting to another AI to do that would be great. But then you're bouncing between tabs, bouncing between tools, right? So yeah, fast forwarding to the end of the chat and then getting that document is helpful. We use it for like assessment analysis, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, another idea is I've seen teachers create activities for grading specifically. So within Flint, we do have, like through a one-off chat, you could have Flint help you grade or write comments on different student materials. But if there's like a certain process that you use every time, or like a certain rubric that you use every time, or a certain format that you want every time, then you would have to like train it in each chat to do that. But what you could do is you could create an activity that is just built to help you give students feedback or help you to parse through all of the information. And then if you tell it like what you're looking for, how you want it to format the summary, then you can just like keep going back to that and input student responses as separate sessions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what would the workflow, how would you do that exactly? You would say create a grading assignment or something, and then how would you feed it the content?
Yeah, I would do a custom activity and then just like give it like your rubric, guidelines on how you want it to summarize the information for you. And then with every response that you have from students, you can print out the session. And then that should, Yeah, I think you would need to print out both the session and then if there's anything that they've written in like a document, you might want to like download that as well, and then upload both of those documents in back into Flint in that grading activity and have it evaluate from there. Now that I'm describing this though, it might make sense to like make it easier to transfer files between different Flint activities. Yeah, Jacqueline?
I have a question about creating activities. So when I was just starting to play around with it, I was creating the activity, had to walk away from my computer, maybe close the tab, and I hadn't quite created the activity yet. I was still playing around with like the preview.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like if you don't create the activity, it doesn't save your chat. And then once you create the activity, you can't go back to your previous chat. So any suggestions for that? Am I missing something?
You're not missing anything. It's something that our team is working on. I think like in the next step that we're looking at is saving the chats for those builder sessions. I don't know what exactly the timeline is, but I know that like the team is doing some refactoring of the backend, which has to happen first before we can do that. So yeah, eventually the builder chats will be saved. I don't know if we'll have like draft activities necessarily, but what I would suggest to you right now is just create the activity whenever you need to like leave your computer. If you need to come back to it, at least, or if you create the activity, it will by default just be in your home page. So it'll show up in My Activities, in the My Activities section, but no one else will be able to see it unless you share it with them directly. So you can kind of view this as like a place where you've created all of these like different drafts. But yeah, I would say from there you can like go back to it in a separate session. Yeah, unfortunately we don't have.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I played around with that too, kind of just like um I, threw it out to the students and then realized there were some changes I wanted to make and then reopened it and made the changes and those did happen in real time. It would just be nice to see like what did I already say? Like where in my original explanation did I go wrong? That it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. So I'm glad to hear that that is something on the horizon.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, Jenny, could you describe a bit more what you mean by like the disconnect between building with Flint and build manually?
Sure. I'm just hearing, for instance, that attaching documents in the build with Flint is not showing up when you pop over to the building it manually. It feels like there's a couple opportunities for work to get lost or wasted, and I'm wondering if sticking with the build manually makes more sense until those gaps get closed. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to investigate it with the team a bit more. Honestly, it's my first time hearing about like it not attaching it into the guidelines, but I do know that sometimes Flint will like look at a resource and then rewrite it in its own language in the manual settings. For example, like if you upload a rubric, it's not going to attach the rubric to the guidelines, but it will change that rubric into the grading rubric section. So I'll need to look into it more. I think what I would suggest actually is building with Flint because that's still like a lot faster and a lot easier, and then checking that it uploaded all of the like important resources that you added in by switching over to the build manually tab. Yeah. Tavon, Tavin.
Thank you. Yeah, question. Do you guys plan on adding like right now there's a feature that allows for the material to be read, right? Are there any plans to add like an avatar or an anthropomorphic, character of some sort?
Yeah, that'd be cool. I do know like a lot of the big like AI companies are coming out with what they're calling multimodal AI models. So they like ingest not just text, they also ingest video and image, and all of that information is used as training data for the AI. So I think eventually we could leverage one of those models to like create videos and create like anthropomorphic, maybe it's a little Flint rock talking to the students.
It is dicey when it comes to like history. I had an experience with doing an activity about, you know, the nuclear bomb, pro and con, and AI generated images being kind of, you know, getting into some problematic territory. However, you know, just for content delivery, I think it would definitely, you know, tap into the human cognitive, right, bias toward kind of getting delivered information from a human. I know that's the feedback I get from my students is that like I mean, when it comes to the direct instruction piece, you know, that, I mean, obviously you can use Flint for so much, right? Direct instruction, retrieval, assessment, I mean, all kinds of things. But just when it comes to the direct instruction piece, that's a way, I guess, to that it would be even better. You know?
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah. And like, I guess to give you some background, originally, I guess like maybe a year ago, our team at Flint was very hesitant about adding image generation even into Flint because we were like, it's not really accurate. Like it keeps making these diagrams and graphs that make no sense. So we don't want to like put something in Flint that couldn't, you know, reliably deliver inaccuracy. But then we also saw that there were so many use cases beyond, you know, just images that require high accuracy. So we did add it into Flint and we added like a disclaimer on it, just so teachers are kind of aware, like, hey, this might create things that look funky, just like double check it. So maybe that's something also that we could do once we have that ability to add various like additional visual stuff. Yeah. Great. Okay. Awesome conversation. I will move on, however, simply in the interest of time. So yeah, so when it comes to activity creation, my top two tips are always like preview and iterate, and then also upload examples or content. These are both things that, you know, A, you can check that the experience is what it will is what you want it to be, and then B, that the information that Flint has is accurate to what you want to teach. And then here I also listed some like ideas for how to prompt your activities. Sometimes Flint is kind of wordy, so it's good to tell it to be concise, especially if you have like younger students who might not want to read a lot of text. Yeah, and then you can also tell Flint to cite its sources. I feel like that would be something kind of relevant for social studies courses. Yeah, and then just teach students to, you know, double check what Flint is giving them, especially when it's like pulling stuff from the internet, see if it's like a source that is reputable and have them practice that skill. Yeah, and then if you want it to be more customized of an experience to the student, you can start the conversation by asking the student about their preferences. So for example, in like the activity that I just created, I allowed students to choose which country they want to represent, but you can also have this be something as so much as like, hey, I like this is an activity to introduce you to this new topic. Feel free to pick a movie character or a TV show character that you want to chat with to explain this topic to you. Yeah, it can be something fun like that or something a bit more, I guess, relevant to the topic. Yeah, and then you can also have Flint add more storytelling elements and descriptive language. I know Ned does this really well, actually. He like has created a lot of templates in Flint where it's like very built out like RPG scenarios and like very gamified experiences. So you can definitely like lean into the creativity of the AI. But yeah, on the right hand side here, I've added a picture of a template where, you know, students are developing a thesis statement, and as an example of how you can get Flint to, you know, scale to the student, here it's asking like, hey, are you an EAL student? And it's going to adjust the language based on how the student responds to that first message. So you can definitely add in your prompt to have Flint customize the experience from the get-go so that your students are well accommodated too. Yeah, and then I have a couple more examples here of different templates. I found that there were like a lot of really cool templates for social studies use cases. But yeah, like this on the left-hand side, there's like this example of pairing questions for a certain reading. So like I created a very kind of one-off example for you all just now in the activities, but you could also have Flint just create additional questions or practice based off of some content that you already have. And that's like a really quick way to create activities and really engage students with existing content. Yeah, and then on the right hand side here, it's an example of like the RPG mystery game that Ned has created, which is also really interesting. Definitely recommend checking it out too. All of the templates are linked in the slides as well. Yeah, and I'm sure Ned will speak to all of the things that he's created later in the share out. But yeah, also just want to touch on students can create their own activities as well. I've seen some teachers have that be the assignment, like create an activity for yourself or your classmates. And yeah, this is great for like study groups. I've seen students use it for extracurriculars. And I would say like for the students, creating activities is better for having a more customized sort of practice and more recurring practice. Of course, most students will probably be using just a chat if it's like a one-off question that they have or one thing that they want to understand. But yeah, helping them figure out how to use AI, how to prompt it well, can also be like a really good learning experience. Okay, I will really quickly run through chats so that we have time for the share out. But so in Flint, as I was showing earlier, the top portion allows you to start chats with the AI. And so as an example here, I chose the option to create a lesson plan. And so it's going to start asking me some questions about what I want the structure of my lesson plan to be. And so I said, I'm teaching human geo to 7th grade students, and our next unit is on migration patterns. Help me create a lesson plan to cover both key topics and case studies. And so it was able to create this document that had like a bunch of unit objectives, essential questions, key vocabulary, and then it gave me a day-to-day breakdown of all the different activities I can do. And of course, you don't have to follow this to a T. I think it's like a great way to gather inspiration. Yeah, so it gave me like a bunch of different activity options, and specifically, I think this one, yeah. It suggested this jigsaw activity where students form expert groups to research contemporary migration situations. And so I thought that one was interesting. And then I asked it, could we use a Flint activity for this? So you can ask Flint about itself in the chats and ask it to, both create materials outside of Flint for you to use, but also see how it can help you create things in Flint. So here it like gave me a class setup document for how I could use a Flint activity. And then I asked it for, like, could this all be in one activity? Because it suggested to make multiple. But yeah. Oh, and then I also said, can you make the settings for the activity so I can just paste them in? So it was able to create this document. It actually has like a table of all of the build manually settings. And then I could just copy this document and paste it into the builder chat and it'll like do that for me. Or I can, copy paste into each of the sections as well. But yeah, that's like a cool way to, if you are using Flint on your own as a teacher to brainstorm, you can also bring it back into the activity section as well. And I also wanted to show you how, as a teacher in Flint, you have all of these tools. It says for teachers in the top right. But if you click on that, you'll also see the student view. So you can kind of show students how they can use chats for helping themselves with their learning. And as an example here, I chose the option for it to quiz me on events during the Cold War, pretend to be a quizmaster from Severance. I am almost done with the show and a little bit obsessed. So I feel like it does a really good job of channeling that Severance corporate intensity. And, this is just like you can show students how they can make quizzes even like this fun. And yeah, it's, asking me for the different facts, and it's also incorporating various fun tidbits of like storytelling and descriptive writing, nods with corporate approval. But yeah, that's everything I had for chats. As a summary, you can create activities for students, great for structured lessons or use anytime, honestly. You can have students make activities. You can generate materials to use outside of Flint, or use the chat also to generate materials to use inside of Flint. It's kind of meta. And then you can also have students practice on their own through chats. Okay. Any questions about all of this before we go into the share out?
Lulu, I think there might be a couple of questions in the messages.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. All right. So Emma asked, is there a way to track the amount of time students spend on an assignment by default? Yeah. So if you go into, let's see. Let me find a session example that I have submitted. But essentially, once you have all of the student submissions, it will show you how long students have spent on each assignment. So here it shows you like what time this submission was created and when it was submitted, and it'll show you like a duration. It's not exactly active typing time, so I will like give you that as a caveat, but that kind of shows you like between when they started and when they ended. And then when you look into the student's actual submission, you can see how much they actually interacted with the activity. Oh, go ahead, Izzy.
Hi, so I had a question about the grading and the activities. So I find that like as students like progress in the activity, like it'll grade them harsher if they start out really like struggling, and then it won't take into account like their later improvement. Is there a way for me to change its grading system so it can do that a little better?
That's a good question. Yeah. It does view it holistically and like not so much as like how much progress you have made. You could maybe ask it to do that directly in the settings, like say, I don't want you to grade based off where the student starts off, but I want you to grade based off where they end the conversation, and like, or how much improvement they've shown throughout the conversation. That might help. I haven't tried it myself, so let me know how it goes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then is there any way to create a social forum, a discussion forum for students to interact with each other and also with Flint? That is something that we're exploring, like how to have group chats in Flint. That would be really cool. In progress, definitely something that our team is looking at. How can Flint assist teachers who are skeptical about using AI with their students, specifically related to writing research papers? They want students to do all the research and writing, but they're aware that Flint can help students with writing mechanics. Yeah. Again, this is like something that we've been looking at a lot, because AI is built to help you write stuff, it's like, it's basically a word generator. But yeah, like Flint, so Flint sometimes will be overly helpful. So typically I tell teachers, like, if you're a bit concerned about bringing Flint too early into the process, you can definitely only open it after the students have like a pretty fleshed out draft. And then like Flint will just be giving feedback on what they've written rather than, like helping them fully form all of the ideas that they want to incorporate in their writing. We did have a session on writing specifically, and I can find that link and send you all that recording. But in there, we kind of spoke about some tactics for getting Flint to be more strict when it's giving feedback. But the summary is like, you might have to tell it multiple times. I would definitely check with it, like check it manually and see how much feedback it's giving students. And then also, if you tell it to be more concise, it will also usually not give as much to the student right off the bat. So that can also help with it being too helpful and giving too many examples. Oh yeah, Emmett. The analytics are actually just for the Flint admin at your school. It gives like the full school view of analytics. So if you're just a teacher at the school, you won't see it. But if you're curious, you can probably ask your administrator about it. Okay, lots of good questions today. I will move on to the share out. There was one teacher who sent me, he wanted to be here, but something last minute came up. He sent me a long description of how he uses Flint. I thought it was really cool, so I added the whole thing in the slides. I won't dive too deep into it unless we have some time at the end, because I did also ask Ned to share his experience. So you have the floor, Ned.
Thanks, Lulu. Can I screen share? Or do you just want to do it on the back end? It's your call.
Yeah, up to you.
Go for it. If I can screen share and show my screen, that'd be awesome.
Okay, yeah. I think you should already be able to. It should be the box with the arrow pointing up in the bottom. It says present now.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Do the window. Hi, everybody. So I'm Ned Cordemanch. I am a history teacher and department chair. How's that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Cool. Well, that's cool. At the McDonough School, so we're in Baltimore, Maryland, and I, like so many of you, am a teacher, history teacher, social studies teacher in the high school, and then also a department chair, so sort of do both, classic sort of middle manager. And I've been working with Flint for maybe almost 2 years now. It's just been such an interesting and I think really like fruitful experience. It's really enhanced my teaching in so many different ways. I think my students would agree too, from anecdotal and from sort of polling the class. And so I think, given Lulu's amazing overview, maybe most helpful since you all are here and Flint and AI curious, maybe focusing more on our experiences here at McDonough with the why, like why use AI, why in particular Flint, and trying to sort of spread that to our colleagues and within our faculty here at McDonough. And I think it's been a three-part process. It's probably been the most the most effective way, if I had to summarize it. And we're sort of each day trying it, each week, each year. And so really, I think starts with the skills. We have a healthy debate, as I'm sure many of you do in the humanities, about content versus skills and what's the right proportion. And I hope that debate will go on forever, because I think it fuels a lot of really good thinking and helps us sort of push the edge of what we do. But sort of skipping right to the skills, I think in step one for teachers that are questioning or know nothing about Flint and using AI in the classroom has been really effective, because we can pretty much all agree, at least in our school community, and I imagine yours too, that the skills really matter and that we could all give up 10 minutes of class time to work on those skills. And if there's a tool that allows us to put very little time up front invested, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Honestly, you could do it less than that, but let's just say 5 minutes. And then get really high quality reps, so to speak. I love, like Kevin Gregario in a previous session talked about, like, AI and Flint as like a pitching machine in a way that we as humans, as just sentient creatures, just can't do. Just don't have time in the day to create that many practice problems, assess them that quickly, give the students that feedback. And so here's an example right here of one that was pretty quickly created. It's up on templates. All the stuff is up on templates too, if you want to use and repurpose. So just creating a quick, simple writing workshop. And this works middle school, high school. I suppose you could do it at any level. And Flint will adjust it, but just giving this to a new teacher or an AI, someone who's skeptical, just saying, hey, give it a shot, right? In 2 clicks, this could be running in your class. You could run this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you want in your class, but it's going to practice something that we all agree is an important critical skill, an important writing skill. And so showing examples like that, this is maybe a little more like leaning into the power of AI, and maybe not something I'd start with, but using the visualization, the sort of image creation that Flint has added on and has got more powerful over time as well is really, really cool. Like, that's usually a longer in-class exercise in which I'm asking students to maybe read something and then sketch it manually, and not all students are comfortable with that. And hidden in here too is some prompt engineering skill work too that I wouldn't mention to the new teacher or the students, but it's in there. And the results are really cool. This is a freshman class that was working on a really tough sort of theoretical secondary source. This guy Tainter, who's talking about the collapse of empires, and one of the models is the dinosaur model, which he uses to sort of explain all these characteristics that might cause a community to collapse, an empire to collapse. So this student is going through and having read it, really exploring the 3 different models. It's dinosaur, house of cards, runaway train, and trying to create visuals that really matched what he saw in his head. And Flint did a great job, I think, like nudging that student to be more specific, to make sure it involved components of the theory itself, which I thought was so neat. And again, like, I think it's just less contentious. Like, it just sort of, the teacher immediately says, like, all right, like, even if I wasn't super impressed, like, I got 10 minutes of skill work in there that I couldn't have done otherwise, and my investment was minimal because we handed them that particular assignment. Here's another one too that is so important in our world, and something that my department, our department, feels really strongly about. Helping students vet and evaluate sources. And so this is also really annoying to set up and prep, going out there and finding or creating for yourself this kind of source material, but it's something that AI can just do endlessly. And I think Flint creating those guardrails and making it an educated, sort of an education specific and tailored AI tool is just so great. And again, not hard to create and or just borrow it from the templates. And so then I think the second part, so that was focusing on the skills, just to kind of as a foot in the door. I think the second part then is the ease of use. Scoot this over. So hopefully that teacher then, when they've run it even 5-10 minutes, they've noticed that, wow, within like 2 clicks I was up and running. Wow, like I get all this stuff here, where I can see it. The sort of overview of how the student did, what happened. I can sort of watch them do it in real time. But even someone who's sort of a Luddite, not tech comfortable, which I totally get. We're all so busy. Can I hopefully see that it's, the interface is actually pretty intuitive. It's all right there. And I think, they just start to get the sense like, oh, it's not so scary, right? This is fairly easy to use, which I think can be really, really powerful for them too, and just sort of demystifying. So again, I think starting with the skills so they can kind of see the value, educational value, if they're not tech junkies, understandable, right? This may be a reason why we teach and we're not in tech. And then secondly, pointing out like, hey, that wasn't so bad, that wasn't so scary. I think the third and final part then is usually at some point then in that process, you sort of tap into a little bit of, as Lulu mentioned earlier, like that creativity and that curiosity, which is so powerful. And so creating stuff like the Hypatia example from earlier, and sort of ancient Alexandria as Christianity is beginning to sort of do its thing in the former Roman world or the late Roman world is cool. Here's one that was really neat too, dropping students into a historical scenario. This really wasn't that hard to prompt, but I personally gave it a lot of background data and input, a lot of RAG stuff. So I think it could have done it without this, but kind of keeping it on task and giving it some more historical nuance and detail. But the long and the short of it is telling the students, hey, you don't know anything about this event, and that's okay, right? We're going to pretend you're a detective. You're getting dropped into Weimar Germany in the 30s, and just explore, right? The AI Flint is going to walk you through this role-playing game, and all you need to do is use those critical skills, right? Use those historical skills to be that detective, and try and solve the case and get a better sense of what happened. And even students that fell short, there's so many things they worked on there, flexible thinking, critical problem solving, source evaluation, all that stuff. And what's so cool too along the way with the ability to, oh, here it is. This is one of the students going through with image generation. I love actually how AI can bring some like historical detail and some drama to it. And so the students, I mean, even some of them that aren't that into the AI experience for various reasons, I think generally have really positive things to say about these because they feel like a video game. You know, they feel creative and immersive. And that's cool, you know, but your colleagues may not be that into that. I think what is then maybe the last point in that creativity and curiosity is creating a culture within your department or your school where, hey, let's share out the cool stuff you're creating because it's really empowering. If you feel like you have a magic wand, you know, this AI magic wand that without any coding experience, essentially, with just some critical problem solving with just the language we've all mastered, English, or whatever language you know you're using in your classroom, you can prompt really cool stuff, and AI kind of fills in a lot of the gaps. And I think creating a community then where you're able to share that stuff out, maybe sometimes give shout outs, spotlights for the ones that are most effective, or maybe get the most activity uses. It's just I think a fun way to like kind of make it infectious, and it's been effective here. And happy to answer any questions and kick it back to Lulu. I think I will stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Ned. Yeah, everyone, for context, I had asked Ned to kind of speak to both using Flint as a social studies teacher, but also as a department chair, like needing to lead the what is the word? Being the leader in his department to really get people to open their eyes to AI. And I think like the couple of things that you mentioned, like, you know, having people not be afraid of like being curious about it, just like trying it out. Sometimes I tell people like, hey, even tell your students like your first activity can be an experiment. You're also learning from it as a teacher. And I think having that open conversation with them is really important. But yeah, thanks, Ned. I know we only have like 2 more minutes on the schedule, so I'm going to really quickly wrap up, but then we can do additional questions after. Yeah, so next week we have a session on research, and I've like invited some librarians to share how they've been using Flint. Yeah, that might be of interest to you all. It's not always that the next session is for the same target group as the current session, but I think in this case it might be. Yeah, so if you are interested in that, want to register for that, you can use the QR code on the left-hand side. Alternatively, you can also just like subscribe to the calendar and you'll be notified of upcoming sessions. And then we do have a Facebook group where we encourage people to join, ask their questions in there, especially if they're wanting perspectives from other educators. Yeah, our team is also pretty active in there to answer any questions about product as well. But yeah, that was everything that I had. If anyone has questions for Ned or for me or other ideas that they want to share of how they've been using Flint, feel free.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. Hello, everybody. Lulu, phenomenal job. Ned, it was great hearing all of those different experiences. My name's Jacob Eddington, and I'm actually going to be sending an email out to everybody. I'm the new head of customer success here at Flint. So this is day 3 for me, and I have a background in social studies being a teacher. So seeing all of this has been very inspiring because I'm still learning the product, but also kind of learning other different things on the back end as well. So I've really enjoyed seeing like how this is being incorporated. There's ideas that I was even having of how I'd want to integrate it. You know, seeing some of the examples that Ned, you had put out there was really, really cool as well. So, you know, especially that mystery case of, you know, hey, let's figure this out. And you get to really get that critical thinking from students out there. And again, I think the really cool and versatile thing about the product too is that you're able to take this and inspire other groups, and other groups are going to inspire you across your school. So what you do here in the history department might be really resonating with one of the English teachers, and same thing vice versa. So again, I'm just very excited to be a part of the team, very excited to be connecting with you all kind of throughout as we go through this journey. But this was kind of the perfect campfire for me to jump into for the first one. So thanks again for everybody joining.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. Glad you were able to join and also had time to introduce yourself. Yeah, that's also like some of the spirit of why we do these campfire sessions, really, I guess, tapping into the brains of everyone who is using Flint and giving them a platform to share and just talk through the tough conversations as well. But yeah, I guess that's everything. I'll post the recording as soon as possible. and everyone here and everyone who registered will get an email about it. But yeah, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully I'll see you in a future session. Bye all. Yeah, thanks again, Ed.
See you soon, Lulu. Thanks.
Bye.